and partially proficient was 5%. In the black category, advanced was 14%, proficient 46%, and partially proficient 41%. Let me repeat that. This is just biology, ladies and gentlemen. Subgroups. For blacks, 14% advanced. For whites, 49%. Proficient, 46% for whites. For blacks, 46%. Great. Advanced is a disparity of almost 35 percentage points. And partially proficient, 41%. Nearly half the students who took the test in Columbia High School are partially proficient. Students with disability, 7% advanced, 45% proficient, 48% partially proficient. Economically disadvantaged students, I don't know why they name it that, but they have to. We know who economically disadvantaged students are. 7% advanced, 45% proficient, 48%. Close as possible to 50% of those economically disadvantaged students are partially proficient. Now, these are not new numbers. This is something that we had known for some time. And are we really surprised at these numbers? Are we actually surprised? Well, I'm not. Because these are some things that we can do. And here's why I'm not surprised. Take a listen.
That one day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Segregated schools were and are inferior schools. We still haven't fixed them 50 years after Brown versus Board of Education. And the inferior education they provided, then and now, helps explain the pervasive achievement gap between today's black and white students.
I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream for this.
When we take those tests, even when black and Latino students score at the top of the distribution, so even when black and Latino students do very well using the biased and absurd indicators that we use in this country, they're still 40% less likely to be put into an advanced placement class or an honors class in high school than white students who scored in the middle of the distribution. So you have average white students, according to this criteria, and of course the criteria is bogus, but understand it's the one we use. Using this criteria, white students who are merely average are still more likely to have advanced or accelerated classes once they get to high school. Now, what does that mean? It means that those students are going to get more prepared for the SAT, right? They're going to get more prepared for the ACT. They're going to take the test and they're going to do better. And we're going to act shocked when people of color do worse on a test that they were systemically excluded from preparing for, as if that is a surprise. I mean, black and Latino students of whatever socioeconomic status, 2.5 times more likely than whites to be put into remedial classes, where they're not going to receive the same instruction, they're not going to have the same coursework, they're not going to be challenged in the same way, right? And so we then act surprised when in 11th grade they take the SAT, the ACT, they don't do as well, and then our society says, what? Well, now you're not capable of going on to college, or at least not that college, because you're not as smart as somebody else over here. The fact that the structure of the educational system guaranteed that you would not do as well virtually assured it is something we don't want to talk about. But that's the systemic issue.
To me, our achievement gap is largely a function of institutional racism. It's largely a function of how we do education. The overassignment of students of color to special education, that's institutional racism. It's built into the system. Institutional racism is where there's a set of assumptions, behaviors, procedures, ways of doing things that are just commonly accepted that everybody kind of participates in, but they have these inequitable results by race. Overassignment of students to special ed, students of color to special ed. Overassignment of your least experienced, least trained, least educated, most alternatively educated teachers to the kids, to students of color. If you look at a district that's very racially diverse and has middle class, lower class, all of your most experienced, most educated, best teachers will be in the middle class white schools. And the greater percentage of your least experienced, new teachers, particularly brand new teachers, least educated, most alternatively certified, will be in your low-income schools, particularly students of color. And that's national, and it's accepted. That's institutional racism. Overassignment of kids of color to buildings that are the worst buildings, have the worst supplies, have the worst equipment or the least equipment. Underassignment of kids of color to gifted class. All the experts say gifted is equally distributed across all populations. So if I go into a gifted class in a diverse school, I ought to see the same proportions of kids in the gifted as I see in the low track. But 90% of the schools you go into, if you go to a low track school in a diverse school, it'll be kids of color, low income, in the low track, and in the high track will be white middle class kids.
Well, excessive grouping has persisted for a very long time for a number of reasons. One is that I think many teachers just see it as convenient. You know, if you have a group of kids who are not so far apart from each other, they think that it's easier to teach. I think in many cases there's pressure from the parents or advocates of the high-achieving children who are often in favor of having children who are high-achieving be separate from others. But I think that there's kind of a well-meaning belief that instruction should be as targeted to each individual child's needs as possible. And I think many people then take the next step to imagining that the only way to do that is to have children physically separated from each other, either within class or into separate classes. I think that that students shouldn't be separated for long periods of time in any case, and that if you had a grouping plan that you were using that caused children to be separated by performance, and that it so happened in that school that separating children by performance also separated them by ethnicity or language background or what have you, it would give you a very strong message that this is not a good thing to do. I think, you know, we have many goals in education, many objectives, and certainly a sense of being one student body and ultimately one community and one nation is a primary goal in education, along with many others. And if you were using a grouping plan for an instructional reason, it had better have a very strong rationale and be used in a very limited way if it has the effect of separating children by ethnicity or race or language background.
So in schools, for example, the lower expectations that students of color and white students commonly, the students of color and low-income students and language minority students commonly run into are a form of institutional racism. Tracking structures, and then the whole tracking special education continuum, so you have special education all the way up to, you know, college prep and GATE. gifted and talented, in which white students are disproportionately in the upper level groups, as are affluent students and students of color and students from low income communities are disproportionately in the lower level groups, that are then given instruction that takes them to very different futures.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And that's from an organization called Creating Tolerance. And here we have the proficiency outcomes in biology in our wonderful school district of South Orange Maplewood at our high schools. So maybe as we move along, we can say that maybe things will get a little better. And it really and truly, ladies and gentlemen, does not get any better. But for the sake of time, we're going to go over this report. We're going to go over this report in its entirety tomorrow. But I just wanted to bring you that first part. And just looking at biology, we start with biology. And it's kind of sad that in today's day and age, these are the numbers that we are seeing in our school district. And now that we have hired a diversity consultant, I guess to even things out, let's see if the diversity consultant can have an impact on these numbers, whereas that we have too many kids of color in this school district who are partially proficient. I mean, when you talk about 48% of the economically disadvantaged kids in biology being partially proficient, that's way too high, ladies and gentlemen. Way too high, I submit to you. When you have 41% of the kids of color that are partially proficient, that's way too high, ladies and gentlemen. And it's been going on for way too long. When were we going to decide that this was problematic? Now there's threat of another lawsuit. Why do we even have to wait for those things to happen? Let's do it on our own. Let's be proactive. Don't be reactive. Let's be proactive. Get done. Get with the program. We didn't have to hire a diversity coordinator or the diversity person in order to tell us what the problem we have in the school district. We didn't need that. But we're going out and spend $78,000. We could have took that $78,000 and put it into the classroom for some of these kids who sorely need it. Or you know what? We could have taken that $78,000 and give it to Achieve. Yeah, give it to Achieve so they could invest in tutoring so the kids can get help. Yes, invest that $78,000. You know how far that $78,000 can go as far as tutoring is concerned? Yeah, we can help. We can tutor them for the SAT, the ACT, even the PSAT. We got to use our money wisely in this school district. But I understand, due to the lawsuit, maybe they had to hire that diversity consultant. That's bad money. Bad money being spent. Now, it's also going to cover other areas, not just biology. There are going to be other areas too. I mean, these reports, we went over the report 2011, 2012, 2010, 2011. It wasn't any different. It was almost the same numbers.